His rhetoric departs a little from the scale of his policies.
Chris Cook, well, Labour Shadow Education Minister Tristram Hunt is here. Tristram, first of all, tonight we'll deal with two areas, fiscal rectitude and then onto your own area of education. You know, if Labour believes that austerity lockdown, the triple lock, is central to the manifesto, why has this all come about at the last minute? You heard Allegra say that a lot of Labour people have been saying for a long time this should have been happening a long time ago.
Well, we've been working on this for a number of years through...
Who knew?
The party, the public, through the zero-based review, through stakeholders, and we've got to this position now on the launch of the manifesto. And this is a big moment in the campaign, Kirsty, because we've been told a number of things. We've been told that Ed wasn't up to the job. Well, today you saw a Prime Minister in waiting. We've been told that the Labour Party wouldn't put fiscal credibility and rectitude first. Actually, page one, top of our manifesto. And we've also been told that we would be outspent, outmanoeuvred by the Tory party. And what we've seen is a Labour campaign firing on all guns, delivering our message by a very strong leader. Ed Miliband today showed himself, as he said in your clips, ready for government. Okay. And that was the message today.
OK, you can say fiscal rectitude 5 million times, but we want to see some evidence of it. Now, as Duncan Weldon was saying, you know, you've reserved the right to borrow for investment. You are going to borrow, what, 30 billion a year. Why won't you just say so?
What we announced today was no new plans for capital expenditure above and beyond what the government have committed to. So the extra investment that you allude to simply isn't there in the manifesto. What we've said under the triple lock...
But it isn't there under the manifesto, but it is there in your head and in Ed Miliband's head.
No, we go by what's on the page. And what we've said is, so we're going to balance the current account budget.
But not
we're
the
going to
whole
pay down.
budget.
We're going to pay down the national debt as a proportion of GDP. And we're also not going to have...
What proportion of GDP?
Well, it's going to lower as
0.1%?
It's going to no. It's going to lower as a proportion of GDP, and we want to get it. Look, there's nothing progressive about spending money on debt repayments that could go into schools and hospitals. I mean, that is the starting point.
What the difference between
politics.
you and the Conservatives is, the Conservatives said that they are going to nix the deficit by the end of the Parliament. Under a Labour government, the deficit would still be there by 30 billion, because you're going to spend 30 billion a year for investment. Money's cheap, for infrastructure, for grand projet. Why will you not just be honest with the voters and tell them that?
Kirsty, the first thing is that you cannot believe what the Conservatives say, because they said they were going to eliminate the deficit last time. We're not even there now. What we've said is we will eliminate the current account deficit by the end of the Parliament, by the end of 2020, and we will pay down the national debt, and that's what we're committed to. And there's no expenditure announced in the manifesto today which isn't accounted for. Unlike the Conservatives, we know where the money's coming from.
Why won't you actually tell us? Look, you know, it's interesting because a lot of economists think it's a good idea if you were to borrow to say, look, this is good borrowing. This is borrowing for infrastructure. This is borrowing that's going to add to growth in the economy. It's going to add to productivity. Just be straight with the voters. Say you're going to borrow 30 billion a year, and at the end of a Labour government, the deficit will be reduced not by the whole of the 90 billion that the Tories say, but by 60 billion to 30 billion. That's what you didn't say today. That's not what's in the 84 pages, but we know it's going to happen under a Labour government.
No, we don't. We're not going into this election saying more spending and borrowing. We're going into this election saying we're going to cut the deficit year on year, because it is about fiscal rectitude and fiscal credibility and knowing where the money's coming from. So to invest in the National Health Service, for example, we will have a mansion tax on properties which are worth more than £2 million. And that is in stark contrast to the Tories, who've come up with this £8 billion figure, and they have no idea where the money's coming from. So this is about economic credibility and social justice. This is modern Labour principles.
On that very point, not only have the Conservatives said they'll spend 8 billion extra in the NHS, the Liberal Democrats have as well.
Where's the money from?
Are you guaranteeing that by the time the voters go to the polls on May the 7th, you will not have said that you'll spend an extra 8 billion on the NHS? Are you promising you won't?
I'm promising you here and now that every commitment we make to the National Health Service will be funded by the taxes. Whereas this is funny money. This is shaking the money tree from the Tories.
OK, so it's not going to happen.
Money is free and they can just throw it around.
So let's be quite clear. Paul Johnson of the IFS said very clearly you would not know what you're voting for, literally, if you voted for Labour right now. Nick Clegg at the same time said in an interview broadcast earlier tonight, which we are reprising, if Labour's not serious about balancing the books rather than specious stuff, if they don't come up with actually some details today, it's still totally opaque about when they're going to balance the books. There will not be a coalition. That will be a red line. When will you balance the books?
We're very serious about how we're going to do it. We've laid out a number of taxes in terms of not having the cut to the millionaires tax, freeze on child benefit, the mansion tax. There are all sorts of areas alongside the savings we're going to make.
That's not the same as balancing the books.
But this is the key point, because what the IFS also said today in a very important intervention is that the debate which is not spoken about is productivity, because the way you pay down the deficit is through economic growth. And what we've seen under this government is a low-wage, low-skill, low-tax-take economy which isn't paying down the deficit, which isn't giving a proper standard of living. So the stuff that we want to do sits side by side with this.
So
education, skills, growth.
If you're not guaranteeing to balance the budget, which is what a red line of Nick Clegg's...
We're going to balance the budget by the end of the next Parliament, by 2020,
and you're going to show,
and have
putatively, you would show Nick Clegg how you would do that in order to go into coalition.
Well, the notion of having to answer to Nick Clegg on fiscal rectitude is laughable. We will answer to the British public, and we are very, very confident that the British public will look at our plans, which is about fiscal credibility, but also investing in our health service, investing in education,
in infrastructure,
having a rising national minimum wage, cracking down on 0 hours, looking towards a living wage.
Let's go on to your own area.
All these good Labour principles that people can vote for with their heads held high.
This is a key thing for you. We will introduce a legal guarantee for parents of primary school children, wraparound care from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m, delivered by volunteers, presumably a conservative estimate, about 200,000 in every single primary school. How's that going to be paid for? Are you talking about 200,000 volunteers, all CRB checked? Who's delivering this? What guarantee could there be, and how much will it cost?
So this is an important point about social justice and how our young people achieve in the modern world. There's a very brilliant new book by Robert Putnam called Our Kids about the number
How are you going to pay for this?
Hold on. About the number of interventions that young people have, quality interventions, the breakfast clubs, the after-school clubs, the dance clubs,
8 a.m.
the creativity.
to 6 p.m.
Yes. And what we're saying, and we did this under the last government, 17 local authorities already have 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. wraparound facilities. And it's not at every single school, it's access for every school child.
You've said in the manifesto every primary school.
Yes, every child at every primary school has access to this. And what we're announcing today is a coordination facility for that. So you have good quality breakfast clubs and after-school clubs. Parents will pay for these. Parents have to pay, you know, different clubs cost...
How much?
No, different clubs cost different amounts of money.
So what you're essentially saying is there's not a national service here.
I would expect every school which has more than 30% of children on pupil premium to be running their breakfast clubs themselves. I would expect that, absolutely. What we're announcing is the legal responsibility, and parents have a right to demand the 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. breakfast clubs and after-school clubs, because, Kirsty...
A national primary childcare service, a not-for-profit organisation to promote the voluntary and charitable delivery of quality extracurricular activities, a national service. How much is it going to cost parents?
Well, as I've said, different clubs cost different amounts. But why is it that middle-class kids are getting the dance clubs and the swimming clubs and the arts clubs? Because their parents are providing the resource and money for that. What we're saying is that young people should have a right to that cultural activity, that sporting activity, which we know is just as important as the exams, is just as important as other parts of schooling.
You're offering... This sounds fantastic.
Good. You should vote Labour.
No. How are you going to deliver all these volunteers? How qualified are they going to be? And what will the ratio be of volunteer to child? Because naturally it sounds a great thing, doesn't it all? You're going to give every child 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. in every school that wants it. And how are you going to deliver that? Where are the volunteers coming from?
We shouldn't be too statist about this.
Where are the volunteers coming from?
It will take already, well, in 17 local authorities it's already there.
How many local authorities in England?
If you go around different schools right across the country, you will see the breakfast clubs, you will see the after-school clubs.
It's different, Tristram Hunt, for saying that every child who wants it in every primary school will get 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. from trained volunteers, all CRB checked. What
we're saying is that if it's good enough for my kids, if it's good enough for children from advantaged backgrounds, it's good enough for every child in our country.
Every volunteer be qualified to look after children.
Because they will benefit. There will be all sorts of different people. They will be CRB checked, so you can trust your kids with them. But I want to see more children going to dance clubs and art clubs and sports clubs, and a Labour government will deliver that wraparound care, because we know that for their prospects, having this social
Ed Miliband
capital
said
is
in
just as
2011,
important.
you cannot create a good society simply with pleas for volunteers. That is what this is about.
Yeah.
Pleas for volunteers, more than 200,000 of them.
This will be a self-funding process. What we're saying is that you have the right as a parent at an English primary school to demand access to this facility, and a Labour government will secure that. And what we're announcing today, what we're announcing today is the coordination facility for that. So children can have the sport, the art, the drama, the things that make childhood enjoyable, Kirsty.
Don't you think, finally, that the Conservatives are onto something with their right to buy from housing association houses? 1.3 million people with the chance to own their own home. Isn't that what people want?
Well, we believe in people owning their own home, but unfortunately under this government we've seen the lowest level of house building since the 1920s.
So you're against this
this is once again an unfunded policy. We'll look at it carefully, but let's think about this. We've seen £8 billion to the NHS. We don't know where the money's coming from. 1.8 billion for rail fares. We don't know where the money's coming. We don't know where the money is coming from. We'll look at it closely, but this is a Conservative campaign in trouble, coming up with all sorts of ideas to get themselves out of trouble. We believe in home ownership, but more than that, Kirsty, we believe in building new homes, and that's what a Labour government will do.
Tristram, thank you very much indeed. And here's the one you've been waiting for, the Newsnight Index, compiled by Chris Henretti and his colleagues. Today, we see the Conservatives are still the biggest party and widening the gap on Labour. They're up 3 seats from Friday. Labour are down 1. All of which means the Conservatives on 284 seats still couldn't reach a majority, even with the help of, say, the Liberal Democrats, and nor could Labour on 276 seats, even with the help of the SNP. Small parties, take note. The Nobel Prize winner, Günter Grass, author of The Tin Drum, who died today, was regarded as the post-war conscience of Germany, urging obliquely in his literature and also in his social commentary for Germans to own their own history, to face it and to deal with it. But in 2006, he sent shockwaves not only through Germany, but throughout Europe.